Hello, welcome to my game shelf. Okay, this is Holdfast, Russia, 1941-42, by Worthington Games. This is the first edition. The second edition just came out a little while ago. This is the first edition. Got it on a really good price, really cheap. It's a block war game of the entire Eastern Front of World War II between the Germans, German Nazis, and the Soviet Union. It's the Barbarossa campaign. Covers 1941 to 1945 and the entire conflict. It's not a difficult game to play, relatively simple. Like, you know, if I've shown you block games before, I'll show you some more, but it's an elegant way of conducting war games. This is an actual war game, not just an abstract strategy game. So let's dig in and see what's inside. Okay, so here we are. We've got the board right here. It's just a heavy cardstock map. It's not a heavy board, but it does the trick. Folds out into 4 pieces. You got your blocks here. This is the 1941 Barbarossa setup. Comes with green battle dice here. You got your manual, which is really a very small manual. It's tiny. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages with a back cover. So, which I think is basically a strategy guide. So, you know, 7 pages really of rules, and the first part's just an introduction, tells you the map, and then you start getting in. It's not a difficult game. Then you've got the player aid cards, and there's only one here. I think there's supposed to be 2, but I have 1. You can make you can just leave it out for everybody to use if they want to, but it shows you the terrain types and the benefits and costs for movement and combat. When a reinforcement comes for the Germans and the Russians, reinforcement cost, resource point costs, unit charts for combat, strengths, etc. It's not a complicated game, nothing in the back. Then you'll have your RPs. This is your resource points. These are the points you use to actually do things. You spend these points in order to move and attack. Then here you've got your combat strength printed right on the board. You've got your calendar here. So these are yours. This is your turn track. Goes by month. Okay. Shows you costs for example, in winter you've got clear mud and snow, etc., etc. Anyway, here's the map, and look at it a little closer here. This would be what was left of Poland, and then Romania and Hungary. And then you've got the Soviet Union, which swallowed up eastern Poland, and you've got the Low Countries over here, the Baltic countries, down to the Black Sea, and the map stretches all the way to Stalingrad, and just a little past Moscow up to Leningrad. So, and I believe there are some units for the Germans and Finns too. I didn't put them on the board, but so you could simulate that part of the front. But it's a relatively simple game. Sitting as the Russians, you would sit right here, and you can see the Russian pieces are all set up. You can see what they are. Like most block games, they have a step thing. So this one has 4 steps, and this is 4. So when you lose a point, you rotate it. There's another point, you rotate it again. You lose 2, another point, you rotate it until finally it's eliminated. And of course, the enemy, the opposing player, can't see what the actual unit is. Here's a 2-point piece right here, and once this is gone to here, and then there's 1, and then 2, it's gone. So the Germans can't see the Russian parts or pieces, on the Russians can't see the German pieces. Here we are from the German side, and you can see there's an air unit right there, and here's all their pieces lined up. Most of them are 4. Here's the Romanians down here. Here's the Finnish unit. It's actually supposed to be up here. So, nevertheless, this is generally the setup you get when you start the game in the 1941 scenario. There's a 41 scenario, and I think 41 and 42. I believe two scenarios, 41 and 42. I'm not sure there's a 43 or 44 or not. Nevertheless, that's the game. It's compact, simple to set up, very quick to set up, and not difficult to play. There's a few fiddly rules here and there. I think that it could be ironed out a little bit, but it does simulate. Here's movement, for example. How do you move your pieces? Zones of control. If you're a war gamer, you know what zones of controls are. How to activate units for movement and combat. And then this is all designer's notes. So really, it's a 6-page manual. And the 6th page is just an example of supply and combat. So there's not a lot of rules here. And it's a great little Eastern Front game. I really did want an Eastern Front game. And I had one from years ago, and it was very complicated. Was a very big war, a big campaign, and there's a lot to it. And I always thought it'd be nice to have a scaled down, simple, fast-playing Eastern Front game, strategy game, because so many of them were so difficult. And it's an incredibly interesting subject for the military historian. There's so many stories, there's so much to it, and it is hard to give you an accurate representation of the Eastern Front in a simple format because there was so much to it. But this game does a pretty good job of that. It really does boil it down to the essentials. It gives you a real feel for it, and the Germans, they plow forward very successfully until they get to about Smolensk, and then, of course, Hitler made the incredibly stupid idea to take his forces from here as he was driving on Moscow and swing south and create a pincer movement here with Kiev to cut off a large Russian force here. It took a lot of time away from his drive on Moscow. He spent then the winter came, and basically they were lined up here, unable to go much beyond this point. Let me move around here so you can see the board a little better. And so the Germans got as far as Leningrad, never took it, got as far almost to Moscow, and down to Stalingrad, where they had Hitler spent all his efforts. Since he realized he couldn't do much up here anymore, he went and drove down here. Then he thought, well, I'll head for the oil fields down here, which was an enormously bad idea. In my opinion, if he had concentrated on Moscow and Leningrad instead of down here and just left this alone, really, just let these units wither on the Russian units wither on the vine, make his stroke to Leningrad and Moscow, he would have won the war because those are the two most important cities in Russia. And then he could have done whatever he wanted down here, which was really rather irrelevant. Hitler was obsessed with gaining resources. Now, oil is fine, and there was a lot of oil fields down here, but you can't use the oil until you capture the oil fields and clear the route of the oil from here to here, which he never really did. So there was a lot. Once 1941 ended, the Germans were confused and conflicted as to what they should do. They didn't have a plan beyond 1941. The plan was to win the war in 1941, and when it didn't happen, they didn't have a plan, and so they had to come up with things. Let's do this. Let's try this. Let's try this. The Russians had one plan, and that was to win and save their country. And while they took a massive beating, while the Germans dithered and did this and then did that and didn't make up their mind, and then they lost sight of the whole point of the campaign, the Russians knew the whole point, and they drove they learned from the Germans how to conduct blitzkrieg warfare, and eventually drove them all the way back to Germany. And I believe the game will play out similar to that if you play it the way that the German High Command and Hitler played it. If you play it the way it should be done, you'll probably win the game as the Germans, and you'll probably win it in 1941 or very close to it. The problem is you do get the winter and the Rasputitsa, which is the muddy season, coming in October and then into December. And if you haven't gained Moscow or Leningrad by then, you're going to be challenged because then the Russians start getting reinforcements the following year in the wintertime. So it's going to be a very big challenge to pull this off. Now, if you like World War II, you like strategy games, it's a good game to get. It's not expensive. Like I said, got it cheap. It's the first edition. They've come up with a new edition that's a little more improved, but this is a good one. It does the trick. It plays the game. It plays the war the way I wanted it done. Simple. Just abstract enough to not be complicated, but also with enough detail to make you feel like you're actually playing the Russian front, as the Germans or the Soviets. And as I said, it's not that hard to learn. It's not that many rules. So this is one that I actually recommend. It's a very interesting subject. In fact, I like Eastern Front more than any part of World War II because there's so much going on, even down to the tactical operational levels. Very interesting for a military historian. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. It's definitely a big thumbs up for me. I wanted to include this is not a design of mine. This is designed by Worthington Games, and you should be able to find this on eBay, or maybe they have some still in stock. I don't know. Maybe you can get the updated version. It may be a better play. But still, If you want Eastern Front, you want to be able to play this, and it's a couple of hours tops, maybe an hour. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I played it. This is definitely a recommendation. That's all I have. Thanks for joining me on my game shelf, and I'll talk to you next.